Yeah, today I'm talking about money in the music industry. Let's see how this one goes. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the hottest topics in the music industry. It's divided the entire industry into two. With people having such differing and strong opinions, it's made people want to even quit social media. Since the very beginning of digital streaming, musicians have said that they get paid pennies for their work. They feel shortchanged. They feel like that they've put all this time and effort into their craft and they're forced to give it away by streaming platforms such as Spotify, and they're being shortchanged. And if Spotify aren't paying their artists enough, there's only one way to solve this, and that's by artists taking their music off Spotify, not uploading at all. Spotify don't have any music for their user base and it will die. And then another solution will come along and take its place and pay musicians that fair amount that they deserve. But that's not going to happen because you know as well as I do that Spotify is where artists get that mass exposure and take a big leap into the big time. Even major labels are using Spotify's analytics to decide whether an artist has a big enough fan base to sign them. So there is no way in hell you are going to pass up on an opportunity to get your tracks out to 87 million paying subscribers and 57 million free subscribers. That's a combined 144 million people on Spotify right now. That is a mass audience that you want your music to go out to. But I might be wrong. Comment below absolutely not if your music is not on Spotify and tell us the reason why. But if you are on Spotify, comment the word uploaded. But my guess, as an artist who's invested time, money, and creativity into your music, and to have nobody listen to it and get no exposure and nobody appreciate that music, it will be soul crippling. Because the thing about these streaming platforms is their discovery features are truly remarkable. They give every track uploaded a fair chance to be added to their algorithm-based Discover Weekly playlists, which means you can compete and have a fair chance against the most established artists in the world. And Spotify doesn't care if you're listening to Drake or a completely emerging artist. They just want a good user experience. And a good user experience for Spotify customers is listening to great music. And if you've got great music, it will push it out to more and more people. And then people will stay on the platform because they love your music. They will pay monthly or even just sit on the free version and listen to the ads. Either way, Spotify makes their money. And this brings me on to my first main point. Spotify should not be a source of income for an emerging artist. It should not be a replacement for those people who would have otherwise gone to the high street, walked into a record store and bought your CD. It should be a discovery tool, a way of getting more people to listen to your music and discover you as an emerging artist. Imagine you travel back in time to the 1980s and you walked in on a recording session of an emerging band and you asked them, "So guys, how are you actually going to get your music out there? How are you going to get people listening?" And they'll tell you that they're actually going to send their demo to lots of major labels and hope to get signed, and they'll do the rest. But what if you told that same band that there is a radio station out there who will get them 20,000 people listening to their track across the globe and they don't have to pay a penny? What do you think they'd say? Are we getting paid for that? Of course not. They'd be jumping up and down with excitement. The problem with the digital era is that it shifted our perception of the numbers. We're seeing so many artists getting millions of views on YouTube and artists getting hundreds of millions of streams on Spotify. According to Digital Music News, the Beatles sold 178 million records. And in 2018, Spotify have just announced that Drake was streamed, are you ready for it? 8.2 billion times on all his tracks combined in 1 year. And that's 4 times as many streams as what the Beatles managed to sell in 10 years. So let's look at the financial implications of this. In the UK, BBC Radio 1 will pay you £10.98 per minute every time your track is played. So let's keep the maths easy and say that £33 you'll get paid for every track. And say you're played once for a week. That's £231 you'll be paid. And that will be going out to, let's say you were on the most popular Radio 1 show, that will be listened to by 5.37 million people. You're getting paid £231 to get streamed or listened to by 5.37 million people. Do you know how much Spotify would pay you to have your track listened to by 5.37 million people? Over $21,000. But I know what you're thinking. This form of music distribution has completely engulfed sales because the on-demand nature of it means that people don't go out and buy music because there's no need to. You've got it on demand and you don't need to go and take ownership of it. And that might be true. However, that is the cost we are paying to having access to this fantastic music discovery platform and get your music out to the masses. But are we actually getting paid less than people in the 1980s? So let's take one album which sells at £8 in a record store. Well, firstly, 30% of that money goes to the label, 20% goes to the government on VAT. And then you've got another 17% from distributors and manufacturing. Then 6% goes to administering the copyright, which leaves the artist with 10%. You get 10% of that £8. That's 80p left over. And if there's 10 tracks on that album, that's 8p per track you are getting. But the thing is though, Spotify is an on-demand service. People listen again and again and again, and you get paid for that. So how many times do you think people listen to your album again and again and again? Probably quite a lot if you spent money on it. So let's say for the entire ownership of the album, you actually listen to it 50 times. Well, 50 divided by 8p is actually a 16th of a penny. So that's how much you are getting for every time your track is listened to, a 16th of a penny. And this is back in the 1980s, when they say it was the glory days of music and musicians were making so much money. So don't see it as that you're losing out on money on Spotify. See it as a cost. You've actually spent money by agreeing to Spotify's terms that if you do get big, that's how much they're going to pay you. But in return, you get all the discovery features and the chance of millions and millions of people listening to your music and becoming fans. So if it doesn't come from record sales, where does the money come from in the music industry? The number one place where you can actually earn money in the music industry is live gigs still. That's where the money is, the touring. But the thing is, thanks to these streaming platforms, people can discover you even as an emerging artist. You don't need to sign to a major label. So you can actually sell out a small gig before you've even signed to a major label. That was unheard of. Green Day and Kings of Leon are still charging $500,000 every time they play live. In fact, Justin Bieber is charging over $1 million for every live performance. I'll actually leave the link in the description to the full list of artists and their prices if you want to read more. The next one is merchandise. Most established artists are making between 10% and 35% of their overall revenue is coming from merch. With some of the biggest names can earn $400,000 in the hours before a gig and after a gig. Be creative and make something people want to buy. Some bands in Australia even have their own brand of beer. The next one's brand collaborations and endorsements. If you have lots of people following you, then the chances are you can influence their purchases. That means that if a brand comes to you and says, please wear our t-shirts and also put the link in your descriptions, then they go and buy that and you get paid for wearing their products and they get more sales. That's where the money is in the music industry as well. So the music industry isn't such a bad place at all. It hasn't actually changed that much. Unheard of and emerging artists are still broke, and the biggest in the world are multi-millionaires, and that's how it's always been. We're not doomed. It's still a thriving industry with so many opportunities. Just keep focusing on your craft and making great music. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, do give it a thumbs up. If you know someone who needs to hear this, do share it with them. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe.
It's a strange world we live in. It's all we want is loving. Searching for things unspoken. We can hold this talk.